Hello everyone, I'm Priya and I'll be talking about the story of my life. And I want to say I really enjoyed hearing Tim's story, which was really, so colorful. It had so many aspects to it. Mine is a rather direct story in the sense it was early, probably I was barely 12 or 13 by the time I already knew I wanted to do astronomy. And that was probably because of, I grew up in the city of Bombay, which is in India. And we had a planetarium and some amount of public outreach, which was done by astronomers in the city when they visited or, on regular basis. And that's also the time when Carl Sagan's Cosmos was aired on television. And that's when I think I went totally head on for it because I just loved the series, as well as my father bought me the book. So there was lots more in the book. And that is why I even to now, I very strongly believe that public outreach and is very, very important because a lot of children, a lot of students do not know of the possibility of, for example, taking up astronomy as a career. Most little kids want to become astronauts, but the idea of actually doing astronomy as astrophysics, as a science, many of them do not even know that this is possible, and how do they actually go about it, or what are the things that they would study if they do it. And that's why even now I'm very active in public outreach and education, because I think that's a very important aspect, and actually as bringing us young blood, new people into the subject, basically just by exposure. And a long time back, I actually thought that it was actually making everybody an astronomer. But now I very strongly believe that it needn't be done with the idea of making everyone an astronomer. It's just very good in actually showing people the scientific, the scientific method of actually approaching things, which, for example, especially during the pandemic, etc., you actually saw how unscientifically most countries, most politicians, most people handle the whole problem. It was very, very unscientifically. And that's when you realize that what's very, very important is we really need to teach people or show people what is the scientific method, how do you actually look for evidence, how do you build your theories, and do things like that. So the purpose, I would say, that now I've kind of evolved from not astronomy as everybody becoming an astronomer, but astronomy more as a tool to show people the scientific method and how could they actually, analyze things scientifically and things like that. So I would say that a very important aspect is public outreach, and I see that of late a lot of organizations in India as well as abroad have been taking public outreach very, very seriously, which is very nice. So like I said, we had a planetarium, and the planetarium we had some regular lectures being given by astronomers who are from the city on Sundays, on weekends, or on specific occasions. And I think that was also a very important aspect, because you actually, in outreachy things, you just see a lot of nice pictures and it all looks very nice. But if you actually have an astronomer talking to you, he'll show you some, plots and some equations, and, you'd be talking real business, which actually probably is a better indicator to you of what doing astronomy is all about. Because again, like I said, often people just see the pretty pictures of James Webb and they think that's what it's all going to be doing. Or, even Samuel spoke today about test data. It's all very colorful and very nice. But when it actually gets on to doing science with it, you're actually doing a lot of coding and a lot of things which would appear mundane to people compared to, what the glossy, jazzy look that you see in, the way astronomy is portrayed. So often when I talk to students, I tell them, there's a lot of physics, there's a lot of maths, lots of computers in it. It's not just, beautiful pictures. So that's it. So I mean, that's when I was convinced that I wanted to do astronomy. And at that time in India, we had a lot of very good Russian literature, very good Russian books on astronomy. And I was very strongly attracted to that. I had a lot of my friends who were, trying to go to the US, because that seemed the simplest way to go abroad to do astronomy. Especially because in India, most places astronomy was not there as a postgraduate course. You would have had to do it only at PhD level. You would be doing just physics or maths. So the idea was to go abroad so that you can start doing astronomy at an earlier stage. And I was attracted to the idea of going to Russia instead of America because of all the great Russian books and the literature that I'd seen. And I really saw that the way they approached things was very, very different. And that's how I went to Russia at the age of 17 to Moscow State University to actually study astronomy. And I was there for 7 years. The course had to be done purely in Russian. It was a government scholarship, so the government paid for everything. The only condition was that your course was done only in Russian. So I was the only foreigner in my class of 20 people. I was the only foreigner, and everything was in Russian. And in Russia, the other interesting thing is that all the exams are just vivas. They are just oral exams. You do not sit and write any exam for 3 hours. It's all a conversation. So your teacher will just come and talk to you about something. And most exams are even open book exams. Open to an extent where you can read your question today. If you'd like, you can go home and sleep, have a coffee, use the library, talk to your friends, and come back to your instructor. Even after 2-3 days, you may tell him, I want 2-3 days to look up the thing, and you come back there, and that's when you talk to him, and that's all he needs to assess you. He needn't, so I thought this was a very different approach compared to what is done in India. In India, we see that you need to study a whole lot of things, and you're actually just reproducing what you've read in a bunch of books by not looking at the book. You're just showing your capacity to memorize things. And that's what often, unfortunately, students in India do. They memorize things because that gets them across through exams. Well, the Russian approach was very different, where you actually had to converse about it. You were allowed to look at books, you were allowed to use whatever material you wanted, as long as you could convey your understanding. So I think even that was a very important thing about how they conducted exams. And I think that also is something which one needs to think about our education system, of the way in which we take exams and assess students. After that, I came back to India and I did my PhD in Osmania University. That's a university in the country which is the only university which to date has an astronomy department. Most other universities have a physics department, of which astronomy is just a part of the, it's part of the course. So the department is officially a physics department, but you may, study astronomy. That's like the department I work in even now. It's a physics department. Those students who do PhDs will do it in astronomy, obviously. So I was at Osmania University. We have a small telescope also, 48-inch telescope, which was of the university, and a good astronomy department, which was actually very nice. And that was very good for my basis. After that, I did an Indo-French postdoctoral fellowship, and I did my PhD on star clusters, on studying star formation and star clusters. And then it was interesting that the first postdoctoral offer which I got was actually in a different area, which was galaxies and active galactic nuclei. And I really thought it was also a good idea to change your area. The methods were similar, but the area was different. And I thought that would make my my knowledge base broader instead of just continuing with the same thing. So from star clusters, then I went on to galaxies, and I worked with Hubble Space Telescope data as well as Chandra data. And this was with groups in France, which is in Paris, as well as in Meudon, in Lyon. And I went there, and this was for 3 years, so we did some work together. That was also very good exposure. After which I came back to the country, and we have something called the Department of Science and Technology, which lets students actually put in proposals. The good part about it is that you are the proposer, you are the PI, so you actually work on a problem which you have conceived yourself. You're not working under somebody. And that was a 3-year project which I did. And that was also very nice because, like I said, for the first time, you are your own, you plan the problem and you do it all yourself. So that was also very good in training on how to actually think of your problems yourself without using an advisor or someone like that. Now, another important problem which we have in India as well as globally is jobs in academia. And that's why after I finished my 2 postdocs also, getting a job was difficult. And for 5 years, I actually taught in an engineering college where students were actually being groomed to being engineers. So they were, their approach to learning physics or even astronomy was not very serious because that was one of the mandatory courses they had to do, but that's not exactly what they wanted. So that was also, a slightly difficult this thing where you're actually teaching students who do not want to take the subject so seriously because, they are being groomed to become engineers and not astronomers. And then luckily, after 5 years in the engineering college, I finally got a university positions. And so now I'm faculty at a university where now I can do my usual astronomy business. I can teach it, I can do research, I can have a group. And that's made me happy. So now I'm happily settled and happy to continue with research as well as a certain amount of outreach and education program. Yeah. And by the way, I'm also co-chair for the Women in Astronomy group of the International Astronomical Union, and therefore we do a lot of programs specifically to encourage women in astronomy careers because there is clearly a deficit of women in astronomy, and definitely some things have to be done. So what I've been focusing on is training programs for women, because I think that a lot of the problem comes of women or others not having good self-esteem or confidence in tackling research problems because they just do not have the skills. And therefore, it's very important to train them in the skills, whether it's coding or whether it's data analysis or whatever is the aspect. So we have already done 3 training programs for women, 5-day programs, where we are trying to train women to get them into mainstream research and this thing. So thanks a lot, and that's kind of my story.